How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the pod, and currently my house, because the pod is at my house. But we're going to start talking about golf, DNA Golf Instruction. I am the founder, and here to talk about everything golf-related, sports-related, business-related, community-related, even more. Sometimes even politics, but I'm going to stay away from that right now because we're in a tough situation. But I will say that we're going to pray for all of our servicemen and women and anybody that's dealing with tough times right now. But we're here. We're going to start doing this weekly. At least talk to you guys for 45 minutes to an hour about different golf topics and different things that are going on in my life and in the community around me, and especially what I'm seeing from golf in terms of instruction and the direction and operations and public golf and member golf and everything else in between. So we're going to get into this, and today we're going to kind of create a routine here, but we're going to make sure to touch on what the tour's doing, really both tours most of the time, LPGA, PGA, LIV. We don't discriminate here. And we want to make sure that this is a place where everyone can kind of talk and discuss these golf-related topics. And I'm really excited. I'm excited to be here, excited for the new year, spring 2026. Today is March 24th, and golf is right around the corner for us. We've had a couple of days of excitement where the weather was nice. But it's cold again, and below 40, and the golf courses are, maybe some of the public ones are open, but none of the private ones are even thinking about opening for good yet. Maybe we'll see some ranges open and some things of that nature. But it's right around the corner, and the grass is getting a little greener. Things are starting to grow and bud out there. So hopefully you're as excited for the season as I am. For those that don't know, I am not only the founder of DNA Golf Instruction, providing information in golf instruction, but I'm also the director of instruction at Blythefield Country Club, a nice facility in West Michigan here, home of the Meyer LPGA Classic, going into my 6th year. I'm really excited to continue growing there. Program growth has been excellent, and have some new ideas and new things that we're going to get into this year for our women and juniors, and really excited about that. But also excited for you, opportunities for more public to even see me at the facility. I'm looking to do more group clinics, group camps, group boot camps, especially for you corporate people and people out there that are business owners and business decision makers. There's a lot of ways that I've figured out how to not only teach golf, but add the element of teamwork, which is very important with all of the businesses that are out there, and want to provide my services for that, and also trying to do a little bit more online. That's the cool thing about where we are now in life. We can teach anyone anywhere, as long as you have a phone, a way to take an image and send it over via email or even text. So looking to get really active and really happy about the future and where I am and where I'm going, where DNA is going, philosophy and everything else. So we're going to start today by talking about the Valspar Championship that just finished this past weekend. As I mentioned, in some of the last clips and last vlog, Matt Fitzpatrick, he got a victory. The guy's been playing really, really well. Very similar to how he played the previous week, holding it together, just creeping along, holding that lead, staying close to that lead, and just sort of watching everyone else fade. So he's a guy that I'm definitely watching come Masters Week. We'll get into that here in a second. Had my eye on Snedeker, the old guard, great player. Thinking about him as a guy that doesn't hit it as far as the other guys, and he's a little bit older. And there were some stories of him this past weekend talking with his kids who haven't really seen him, in the running. You have no idea how good of a player he used to be, and even the Ryder Cups that he participated in. But he played well. I think the 76 on Sunday, it really hurts. Some of us would dream to shoot 76. But last day of a event, that's not good, and obviously you can't win doing that. But it was good to see him. Good to see the old guy keep up with the young guys, and he played particularly well. The Pingy guy, very very interesting to watch. His setup, those legs were really straight right before the moment of the trigger or pulling it away. And then you saw a little flex in those legs. I talk to you guys all the time about being an athlete. So whenever I see someone's legs that are sort of buckled, that scares me. But very athletic, good move on him. And just another good week of excellent play. The course looked dry, extremely dry. I really feel sorry for the supers out there, the superintendents. The conditions were excellent. Everything looked like it was rolling the way it was supposed to. So condition-wise, it was probably, perfect. But on TV, those cameras really bring out brown spots and dry spots and things that we'll see this time of year, no matter where you are in the country, especially if golf is being played. But thought the course was in excellent shape. But, like I said, I just noticed how dry it was and balls were still reacting, spinning on the greens and these guys are the best in the world, so they really did good at controlling the ball and doing what was necessary. Brooks was playing well, but same thing, kind of off, kind of on, had his moments there. And, real excited to get into Masters Week, which is coming up April 9th through the 12th. We'll be in Masters Week, and maybe we'll see Tiger. Who knows? But really excited. One last thing about the Valspar, there was a conversation about slow play, and that's come up several times, with the PGA Tour, and it's a hard one to judge, right? Like a player that's playing bad might be a little slower. A player that's dealing with a water penalty might be a little slower, and some of these guys are just slower in nature. I think about Sergio Garcia years ago when he would have 1,000 waddles and 1,000 waggles of the golf club. And he would reset his feet, waggle, reset his feet, waggle. He would do it over and over again. And it was the most annoying thing to watch. And he got control over it eventually. Kevin Na's another one where he had issues pulling the trigger. And I'm sure if you put a shot clock on him, he probably would have been stroked more times than not. So we've seen it. Even Tiger, I've seen him play slow. Didn't really look at it that way because we're watching every mannerism, every move, and we're at awe at everything he did. So watching him walk around the green super slow and read the putt from every angle, and 9 times out of 10 he made it too. So it was another reason why we weren't worried about the pace of play. But I remember some moments where he probably took longer than he should have when the clock, would have been on him. But it's something the PGA Tour has to keep their eyes on, and hopefully it doesn't become an issue, especially for majors. Brooks Koepka, I remember at a Masters a few years ago, I think it was him and Rahm, and, he was putting out real quick. If he missed the birdie putt, he would just tap it in, walk to the next tee box, and on that next tee box, he'd have to wait. And it sort of affected how he wanted to play. Then the next major, I believe it was the PGA Championship, instead of knocking in that short putt after a missed birdie or whatever opportunity, he marked it, picked it up, cleaned it, put it down, went through his routine. He spent more time on the golf course in the act of golfing, less time waiting on the next hole. And it was a pretty good strategy. He ended up winning. So knowing your game is very important. Dealing with the variables that are out there is also important. And Matt Fitzpatrick, explained that. Like, all he can control is himself. Yes, it can be annoying, but it's also, used as a tactic. And if it's a tactic, well, guess what? You got to deal with that. No different than tennis. We see some of that. Of course, it's a professional gentleman's game, as we say. But there's still acts within that game that people try to pull, and stepping up to a putt and backing off, stepping up and backing off. I've even seen it in basketball at the free throw line where a guy might have it, get ready to shoot, and he kind of pumps it a little bit, and then there's a foul violation, even sometimes by people on his own team. So there's something to that. But the PGA Tour's job is to monitor it. If it becomes a problem for TV or for the business model or for golf in general, well, then they're going to have to start doing things, stroking people, and we'll see what happens from there. But it is Masters Week, guys. It's coming up. It's the cool thing about April. We get to watch the best in the world play, and I'm curious to see if Tiger will be there. I don't think he can walk, and that's always the big problem with him. We'll see him, I think, tonight on the TGL. I think he's stepping in for his Jupiter Lynx team and taking some swings. So, for the publicity, for the numbers, for the views, for a lot of reasons, I'm sure he's doing it. But he has not looked mobile. I remember when Kim made the hole-in-one on the par 3 for the TGL League a couple weeks ago, and he's jumping around, and Tiger looked like a robot. Like his legs were not working. He wasn't jumping. I was thinking, please don't hurt him even more. There's something else other than the Achilles. So I don't see him playing, and his time is probably over, guys. It's been about 5 years since the last time he played competitively. 19 was the last time he won. So it may be time to think about him perhaps on the senior tour with a golf cart from hole to hole, where they might allow him to do that. But we'll see. Guys to look out for real, though. Matt Fitzpatrick, obviously. Koepka's, he's a guy that I've been watching. His game is just always solid. So, excuse me, if he makes a few putts, then he can be dangerous. Ludwig Åberg, he's another one. But can he hold it together for 4 rounds? Rory got his feet wet and finally won. So can Rory McIlroy, get a victory? The Justin Thomas and Justin Rose, they're both playing decent golf and may make a run. And last but not least, a dark horse in the race, Hideki Matsuyama. Same thing, steady player, playing well, knows that course and has won on that course. So I would not be surprised if any of those names win. I will be glued to the television, no matter if I'm at work or if I'm at home, and we'll be watching quite a bit, and we'll make sure to talk about it on the podcast and discuss what we see. But the beauty of the course, the tradition of the course, the history of the course, there's a lot of reasons to watch, and obviously the best players, even the best players from LIV, will be there, and we'll get to see them compete for another green jacket. So really excited. But a question for you guys. How many of you have had a chance to go to the Masters? PGA professionals get in for free, but I've still never been. I'd like to go at some point. I heard it's a great time. I think I have a place to stay. Shout out Randy. What's up, Randy? But yeah, PGA professionals, we get in for free. And I think it's a place that most people like to go at least once, right? I got to get there at least once. And, my dad always wanted to go and never got a chance to go, and, died in 72. So, I'd love to take him, but I didn't get a chance to. But I got to go at least once. But sometimes with golf tradition, it's a little strange, especially from the African American perspective and the historical side of the club, and I don't want to say issues of inclusion, but a lot of times faces like mine, couldn't be in these traditional places. And even when Tiger won the first time, I remember my dad was so excited to see him win, and we're glued to the TV, and he kind of spanned over to all of the cooks and people that were poking their head out, the workers, to watch him. And they look like me, and I don't know, it just struck me a little bit there. Now, as time has gone by, obviously, they do have female members, they do have minority members, and hopefully that trend continues. But awesome to see history change. I'm one of the guys that does like the traditional stories about golf, even though I know that I'm not actually allowed to be a part of a lot of those conversations. But there's also another side to those conversations that I do feel a part of, the early caddies from the Masters. And you hear how, Ben Hogan's caddy, or excuse me, not Ben Hogan, goodness gracious. Oh, man, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. That's going to drive me crazy. Yeah, I'm going to have to get back to that one. But all the traditional stories, you hear about, and the caddies assisting, helping them figure out how to get their game back if they lost it, reading the greens, understanding conditions. There's a lot of tradition from a caddy perspective that I do feel, very attached to, and also from a golf professional perspective as well. There's an attachment to a lot of these old facilities. So always watching it, always interested to see who's going to win. The person that's leading on Saturday, what's going on in their head overnight. Probably a lot of stress, waiting for that next tee shot and that next day to come. But always a good watch, and I definitely will be glued to the TV, and hopefully I get a chance to go there one day. I think that's one place, and then the other place I'd like to get to is across the pond, see what St. Andrews and the old course looks like, and kind of walk on those grounds and get a feeling of what it would have been like to be there, and maybe even have a chance to play there if I'm lucky. Some of the people from our club have gone. I think a few of the professionals that work at our club have had the opportunity to go across the pond there and play golf and experience that. So it's something that's definitely on my radar, and that I hope I get a chance to do here. Cool time, man. Spring is just awesome. Golf in Michigan, Masters, and March Madness. And I'm sure I got a basketball somewhere. I keep one everywhere. It's a theme with me. Oh yeah, there's one. Oh yeah, we got one. Ready for some March Madness. Michigan schools are doing good. As you can see behind me, I got you can tell what team I cheer for, Go Blue. We're very excited about how we're playing. Michigan State's playing really well. I'm from Lansing, around that area, even though I've always cheered for Michigan more than Michigan State. But, gone to a lot of camps and have a lot of love for my Spartan Nation. And both teams are looking really, really well. Big Ten is looking outstanding thus far. I think there's 6 teams in the Sweet 16 from the Big Ten. And watching college basketball, there's a lot we can learn from a golf perspective. None of these teams will not deal with adversity. Everyone's going to struggle at some point. Even if you have the lead the whole game, there's going to be some pesky team that does something to keep creeping in, keep sticking around, be a thorn in your side, and even have a chance to win, like a High Point did in the first round against Wisconsin. Great example of that. Also you got St. John's knocking off, a number 1 seed as well. So you're seeing the struggle of sports, and I love it because the best team will still have to deal with those struggles, no different than the person that wins the golf tournament each week has to deal with some element of struggle, some bad hole, some adversity that they have to overcome. So I pay attention to the athletes, the attitude. Are heads down? Are they up? Are they fighting for everything? Are you giving up? Coaches' attitudes. How is the coach behaving? I'm a coach, right? And this is a time of year where there should be some trust built. I know it's changed a bit over the last few years with NIL and some of the new things that we're seeing with all these transfers and people not necessarily sticking around for 4 years to build a big relationship. But even one season in a sport with the coach is a long time, and there still should be some element of relationship. I say that to say that I'm seeing coaches get mean, get into kids' faces, but there's a trust there too. I'm seeing kids being receptive to that, especially with the coach Izzo. As fiery as he is and looks, right? Hear it all the time, especially being in Michigan. His players trust him, and his players can talk back, and they will get, aggressive with him and vocal with him. And, I like that. I like that intensity. I always liked coaches that were like that. And I took it as a sign of respect and love and care. Got a little bit of that from mom from time to time as well. And I give it to my kids from that perspective and some of my clients and my students that I think need it, that need to hear the truth and that need to set a certain tone. So I'm watching these coaches and, as I mentioned before, the Michigan teams look tough to beat. Arizona is probably the team to beat. Not unbeatable, but definitely look like they are ready to continue their run here. Houston is a team that I like to watch. Coach Sampson has some Michigan State ties there. And another one of those coaches that I can see how much his players love him and how much he loves his players, and how he builds relationships with them from the freshman all the way up to the senior. And I like to believe that I'm giving that to all of my clients. I take a certain pride and joy when they find success, when their questions start to change. It brings me joy to help them, because I know that, believe it or not, a good golf shot, a good golf hole, a good golf round, it leads to other happiness in your life. And it's an interesting sport that way. You feel good, and it makes you want to play and practice and dive into the game more, and it builds your confidence as well. So whenever I can help or assist with that, I'm here and happy to do that. And there are even times when, no different than the NCAA basketball coach, Division I coach or Division II coach, where sometimes my lessons aren't about golf. They're not about, something technical. They might be more about something that's going on in their life, and being that person that can help them, talk to them a little bit about it from a light perspective, and to have that trust, I really appreciate that. So to all my clients and people that follow, I appreciate you very much, and hopefully you feel, my passion for teaching the game of golf and helping others, which probably does stem from what I saw growing up from my mom, and the people around me. So I'm seeing a lot of that from those coaches, and this is a great time to see it. And even for those seniors or those players that lose that, round of 32 game, that round of the Sweet 16 game, and to see their bodies just give it all up, and they cry and they let it all out. And man, I'm getting emotional thinking about it now. I get emotional because I know what went into those moments. The hard work, the dedication, the focus, the sacrifice of the family, the sacrifice of the community that helped a lot of these people, stay out of trouble, stay on the right path, right? It takes a village. It's a team effort, even from an individual perspective. And I was one of those kids that had a good team around me, and hopefully those values show to this day. And that's no different than the golf pro that has a good team around them, someone that helps them with every aspect from swing to mental, to scheduling, to the next steps and everything else in between. So it's a team effort, and we're seeing a lot of that. So when you see those parents, cheering, and then you see them crying, you know why. You see the coach hug the player, and you see the passion there, you know why. And I eat it up. I eat it up like a Rocky movie. It gets me going every single time. So, sports aren't about perfect. They're about grit and competing, and we get the opportunity to see a lot of that. And dealing with adversity is something that all golfers must be prepared for. And, let's see it from another sport perspective and watch the breathing and watch how people try to control their emotions from a good perspective and a bad perspective. So coaches, keep that intensity up. Keep showing the love, and don't be afraid to be a tough coach and provide that tough love for the kid that sort of needs it. Very, very important. I'm watching the women's, but I'm not as into it as I would have been if Juju was around. Missing Juju, from USC, and hopefully she's recovering from that ACL injury from a year ago, and I think it's UConn's to lose. Coach Gino is an amazing coach, and this is more of the same. I mean, as much as we think that there's more parity, which there is, and more opportunity for upsets in the women's game, he has retooled for the NIL and the new adjustments, and I think he just had some bad luck there, guys, because between injuries to AZ Fudd, and injuries to other big players in the past few years, I think that's why they were sort of under the radar while we were seeing the Iowas and the LSUs perform. And even there, I mean, they're still making it to Final Fours and doing pretty well. So I think it's theirs to lose, and watching some of these other teams, but until I see something or hear something, I didn't, just sticking with UConn and what I'm seeing. I mean, it's sick, and they're not the only one blowing out teams. LSU looks good. I can't remember the young lady's name, but that transferred from South Carolina, but she has a lot more freedom, playing at LSU, and along with Floje there, they might make a little run there. They're just an energy team, man. They remind me of the old Arkansas Razorback teams of the early 90s with Coach Richardson, Nolan Richardson. Just really tough and get in your face fast, up and down, probably talk a little trash out there. So I'm watching LSU, but like I said, I don't see anyone beating UConn. Some of the sports announcers on ESPN and otherwise are saying that there's about 4 or 5 teams that really have a chance. So we'll see how it plays out. But I don't know, man. It's fun to watch. WNBA, I'm hoping that they can get their steam back here. I know they're dealing with their contract stuff, and hopefully that works out well for them. And watching Caitlin Clark is still fun, man. I like watching her hit those threes, and I was glued when she was in college, and especially being a Big Ten fan and someone that follows University of Michigan sports pretty close. Watched her quite a bit. And my girls aren't really into basketball. My middle child, Naya, she's into sports. She's running track now as a 6th grader. And all 3 play golf, of course, which we're going to start diving into more and more. I think I'm missing the boat there. Coach Dad needs to step it up and get those kids out there playing a little bit more. Spending all my time doing podcasts and making videos and teaching other people how to play golf. Sometimes it's difficult to carve out the time for my little knuckleheads there, but their swings are ready. So all we got to do is just hone in a couple things, and then they'll all be ready to go. So we'll worry about them after March Madness is over and then the weather breaks, and we'll be into it. And speaking of golf, every one of these podcasts, we're going to give you a quick tip or something to think about. Right now, the podcast is in my golf studio. This is my golf studio. I got a TV up there that you can't see. I put the Mevo Plus behind me right there, and there's the screen that way. And we're going to probably set up some cameras. And for those people that follow me on social media, we'll be able to, give you a visual, for some of the things that we do in here. And we'll also just give very detailed explanation while we're also giving the visual, so you guys can get a feel for what we're working on, if it's something that is necessary. But as we get into the weather, this one doesn't take a lot of movement. We're just talking about mind state here as the season breaks. And all winter long, you're just like me. You've been watching videos on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, and hopefully watching DNA Golf on all those as well. But you're watching and you're thinking of swinging harder, bigger rotation, bigger move. And I think that's all fine and dandy. But as I'm going to preach this year, and I'm going to really get back to this, we have to examine the other side of that spectrum. Too many of you like to rip into the golf ball as soon as you get a chance to. And this is my test in a golf lesson. Andre, what club do you want me to use? Whichever one you want. And then I just stand there. And I wait to see what they grab. The smart person is grabbing a mid-iron or lower. The aggressive person's grabbing the driver. Or the person that doesn't have much knowledge, they're grabbing the driver. And that's the biggest club that we're swinging the hardest and has the least amount of room for error. So this quick tip for quick tip time is to look at the other side of the spectrum, to spend more time swinging with tempo and relaxation, hitting more pitch shots and chip shots than you take full swings. That's your first step, okay? Your first step coming out the gate is to find the club face, okay? You've seen me do this before. I don't know if my cameras will be set up right for this, but the first thing that I did as a kid, shout out to my brother Jay, was sit with the ball like this. I'll lean down, see if I can get a little bit of this. And I had to use my elbow only. And learn. Ooh. See, that's why you shouldn't do this in the podcast area. And use my elbow only to have that ball go up, right? Working on my flick of the arm, making my goose. And I'm knocking the mic over again. There we go. We'll go there. But it was all about getting that lever active first. And I had to learn how to really understand this, right? And I always think about the kid shooting his shot at the trash can with the piece of trash, and let's see where you're at here. Get this back where I need to. There we go. Where, you're shooting it and you're going, Kobe, and there's a lot of intelligence attached to your lever, to your brain, right? That's where that intelligence is. I talk a lot about AI as athletic intelligence. And your natural ability, DNA, discover natural ability, has a lot to do with that intelligence and talking to that intelligence. The thing that happens when we're aggressive, it's hard to really learn from that intelligence, to feel anything, and we end up raising our anxiety, okay? My mom, PhD in child psychology, I think that's why I'm so special, is that she raised me a certain way, different than my three brothers. I got more of it because I was younger, right? But anxiety is one of the biggest things that I'm trying to get rid of. I'm trying to have you calm in times that are difficult. And that's where I think working from a chip shot perspective, pitch shot perspective, you're controlling your stroke, aiming at a target, you're able to adjust the distance easier, not caring about length of motion, the direction easier, left and right. You can play with path easier, ball contact in a lot of different ways because you're slower, okay? And your mind can process that a lot better, okay? So there's something to that. So when you come out, the first step I think you should do, this is my recommended practice, and, don't take all of this with a grain of salt. And like I said, we will do some things in the studio and get into deeper discussion. But if you were to go to a range and have a range session, I think half of those shots should be pitch shots. I would say if you're a member at a club, that half of them should be pitch and chip shots. Now, I don't want you going to a public range and chipping them right in front of you unless you can pick them back up. You can do that at a practice green. But once again, get that time and practice in. If you can hit a few shots at a practice green, chip shots, play 18 up and down, starting on the fringe, hitting it on. How many putts do you have? How many times you get up and down? Making games like that, sitting there for an hour, picking different stations to hit several, maybe in a whole shag bag of golf balls from. Get creative about your distance, your target awareness, even your club selection from a chipping perspective. And all along, you're getting your eye-to-hand coordination going, your ball contact is improving, and all of that stuff will help you as you go up in length, and in length of swing, length of motion, or length of club, okay? So that's the first step. I think after that, if comfortable, we feel like we're finding the face. Now it's practicing majority with an 8, 7, or 6 iron, a mid iron, something that fits right in the middle of our golf bag. Same thing though, guys, we're still focusing on ball contact and direction. We're not focusing on swinging hard. Let's put that aside for a little bit, okay? Third thing is to now start thinking about the longer clubs, but copying what you did with the mid iron and with the pitch shot, okay? So those are the steps that I want to see in your first couple of sessions out. Maybe even that first session, just go to a practice green and hit a bunch of chip shots and no different than our public facility that I teach at sometimes, Indian Trails here in Grand Rapids. They have a nice area with, about 60 yards, worth of room, and you can hit pitch shots towards greens. So that's a very useful area for the people here in West Michigan. And there's several places like that in town here, and hopefully you have those in your area. Okay? So think about that as a way to practice. Look at the other side of that spectrum. Put those long clubs aside for a bit, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Now, next segment. We're adding this. And we're going to add, like I said, we're going to have about 3 or 4 different segments along with like current events, what's going on the PGA Tour, what's going on with golf. But I want to spend a little time talking about lessons. I've had lessons in my life. So we're going to change the camera angle here and talk about some lessons. And for the people on the podcast, I'm just going over to a comfortable couch to sit back for a second and get comfortable. So we're going to try to move this mic. So the thing about lessons learned, I've learned a lot of lessons in my life. And most people at my age can say that. I listen to a lot of comedians, and comedy is one of those places that I think they're the last truth tellers. And Richard Pryor had a character, Mudbone, that he used to play. And Mudbone talked about wise men. He said, you don't get to be a wise man dying young, right? So there's a lot of young wise men. So they're dead than an MF, right? So I've always took that to heart. And I think with 3 older brothers, it helped me to get over more of those humps easier because I could see what happens in front of me. And I had 2 parents and 3 brothers reiterating what the parents were saying, right? And I'm very thankful for that. I think that one of the hardest things to do is to teach someone anything. Golf, as a golf instructor, like I said, there's a lot of angles and a lot of things that we have to focus on outside of the mechanics. We have to focus on the person, what the person's going through, a lot of psychology there, right? The person's work ethic, their health, who they are as a person, right? Their personality. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I'm lucky, I'm fortunate. And today's lesson learned is sort of about that. It's about remembering those that you love and remembering those that care about you and talking to them and reaching out to them while they're here. One of the biggest things that I struggled with as an adult was losing my parents younger than I thought. And I say that, like I said, with a clever a clever tone to it. And I mean that because I had my parents long enough to teach me everything. They watched me get married. My dad watched me get divorced. My mom was gone by the time that happened. But they raised a man, and I'm so thankful that they provided the tools necessary for me to do the things that I needed to do in my life for me and my children, even without having their guidance. Now, I expected to have that guidance, as a baby of 4, watching us always go to Grandma and Grandpa's house in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, and I would visit with all 4 of my grandparents, until they were all way older than my parents were when they passed. My mom passed at 64, Dad at 72. And, I know there are young people, there are adults, there are people that are way less fortunate than me that lost parents at a very young age, or maybe even never met their parents. And it just reminds me to care about those that care about me, to hold them, to tell them that you love them. And, there's nothing worse than missing those that you can't talk to. And, I have old friends that I haven't talked to in a while, people that I've, either lost the relationship with or just chose to let it go. And even a lot of those, I still have a lot of love for those people and want to give them a shout out as well, right? We need to care more about each other, and we need to do it while we're all alive and we're all healthy, and when things are good, not when things get bad. And it's a tough, lonely life to not have Grandma and Grandpa to yell at me in person. They do yell at me from somewhere else, right? But anytime I see someone who's got a mother calling them and they're rolling their eyes, oh, what does my mom want? Or a father that maybe has an injury or is hard to get around, oh, I don't want to deal with him today. I tell them to deal with them because you don't know when they're going to be gone, and you're going to miss them when they're gone, especially if they put anything into you, any sense into you, as I like to say, okay? I'm very fortunate to have people that put sense into me, and with the 14, 11, and 8-year-old daughters, I'm very thankful that not only did I have the parents that I did, the grandparents that I did, but that I have the family members now and the friends that I have now to rely on. And I just want to encourage you guys to hug your family. If there's some small thing, get over it. Nothing's worse than not being able to say, what you want to someone, and to only be able to think of them from the standpoint of memory, right? And, I could get into other things, but we're trying not to cry here in the first podcast. So we're working on on trying to keep it together here. But I do just want you to know that that is a big thing for me, family. Hopefully I'm a reflection of what my parents taught me. And I want to encourage you to reach out to anybody that maybe you need to talk to that you haven't talked to in a while, because time does not last and it's very, very short. All right? Now, back to our next segment. I appreciate you guys bearing with me. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Family is important. Friends are important. And, you know, a lot of people love you out there, I bet. I love you. I'm glad you're here, you know? So something that weighs on my mind this time of year, I think, because it's Masters time, and I would get a call from my dad, you know, "Hey, Dad, what's up? Tiger's in the lead." You know, I used to love getting that phone call. Tiger's in the lead, just made birdie. Or Tiger's in the top 10. What do you think Tiger's going to do? We'd just talk about him for hours and hours and hours. And it brought my dad so much joy. And it brought me joy too. And, you know, it almost brings him back to life. For those of you that have lost parents, I'm sure there are certain smells, sounds, looks that someone gives you that bring your parents back to life. I get them all the time. And like I said, I'm so thankful that I have those, because they help you, you know, get through the tough times, and you know, just very thankful for all that. But all right, next segment. Golf Tech Corner. Okay, we're going to call this the Golf Tech Corner. And this is going to be a very interesting segment, because I think that I'm a little more traditional than I am with the innovative side with this technology at this point. That may change. But I want to start talking about the golf tech that we're seeing. There's so many things out there, from force plates to simulators to 3D imaging, you know, so many different things that we can name. You know, the putt view stuff that's out there, the new indoor golf domes that are being created. You know, so there's a lot of innovation in golf, you know, but with all the bells and whistles, golf is still golf. And I think right now, you know, the traditional side is grabbing more of my attention from an instruction standpoint, and we'll dive into a lot of different subjects here. But today, I just wanted to talk about golf sims and all the different things that are available to create your own golf simulator nowadays. And I may even break down, you know, sort of how I created, you know, my environment here a few years ago, cost effective. Obviously don't have a lot of money, you know what I do for a living. So had to be creative in how I did it. Sort of bought the house for the purpose of maybe putting, you know, something up, a golf studio. So, but, you know, the first step is just talking about the golf simulators that are out there, and sort of, you know, the tiers that we're seeing. I think the top of the line, you still say TrackMan, Foresight. You know, maybe Unicore, you know, you could throw them in there. I like them personally. I don't use it in my studio, but looked at getting, you know, one for my studio. But those are the top tier. You know, you're paying 20, 25, you know, 30,000 for just the unit itself. And top of the line, best numbers, you know, most trustworthy data that's out there. Then you sort of have, you know, a second tier of more affordable ones that I'd say are between 8 and maybe 4. And that's where you find me. I'm currently using the Mevo Plus from FlightScope, the first version. It's working just fine. I don't feel a need to update to the M2. But the unit itself is somewhere between 25 to 3,500, depending on the face package or the detail that you want in the machine. And I absolutely love my Mevo Plus. And I've done a test in the past where I put TrackMan up against Mevo, and the numbers were very, very close. Give TrackMan the edge, but I couldn't tell you why. Meaning ball flight was the same, the directional information was the same, spin rate was a little off on some occasions, and I did use RCT golf balls. Those are the Titleist golf balls with the, radar capability, which make it very accurate for indoor, not necessary for outdoor for the Mevo Plus or the FlightScope products, but it's way better than the old dotting system. But I did it side by side, like on the same golf ball. I hit this golf ball with TrackMan and Mevo side by side and got a list of numbers, and I felt so good about my Mevo, especially with the cost, the cost being way, way lower than the TrackMan. So really amazed with that. But I've heard good success stories with Garmin products, with SkyTrack. True Golf has the all-in-one unit where the top has the screen on it, and you can carry it wherever. And I think it has a few courses on it. So, there are options out there for those of you that want to put something in your garage, in your house. Several ways to build out areas as well. I'm fortunate I don't have to have mine in my garage. I think one day I would like to build an addition, but with the cost of construction right now, this is going to have to do, all right? And I teach in the winter here, on my Mondays and some other days, some odd days, but I also have access to my TrackMan, at Blythefield Country Club where I work and do most of my teaching over there with the better unit. But options are endless. If you have the space, you can frame out something as easy. Several ways to do it. They have the pre-built frames that you can buy and put in to different places. I had a vision, and I'll let you in on the secret, but I used garage door brackets, right? The brackets that hold up your garage door that have I got them all up there. I'll have to show you guys. But I used that for the framing and then decided to add, netting around it. And, so we'll have to show you guys that on a future show and show you what that sort of looks like. But not a difficult process. And I'd say I probably put mine up minus the Mevo Plus and including my projector, which I got at a used computer store, an old Epson projector, which is perfect for me. I think it's a 1080 p. But I think probably around $2,000, with the framing, the netting, that's about what I paid for, and the turf included as well. So very, very affordable, and I think you could save even more than that. I might look up some of these little clips and bring those out and see what you guys think, because I remember several steps in the process and getting it to where it was usable, then buying additional nets to make it a little bit better and a little more safe, and then adding the element of the simulator to it eventually. So very, very usable, very, very easy to create, and I recommend it, especially for you guys that have the time and effort. But if you do put one up, make sure you use it. And this is where I remind everyone that I am a divorced man and this is my house. I do not have a wife telling me what to do in my house. So I can do things like this. But I'm sure if I did have a wife and divorced man, so maybe the selfishness of having this up is why we'll go there later. But if you do put it up, make sure you use it because it does take up space. I don't look at it as an eyesore. It's a place where I can constantly work on my game, my craft, video, record for social media purposes, bring people over to work on things, punish my kids and make them hit golf balls all night. So I have several uses for my facility, and I operate out of here really on a daily basis. Golf balls are getting hit in here. So even to the point where I may have to switch my screen out. This is probably year 3 with the screen that I have. And, I may be able to switch it out here soon. And found most of the items that I have on Amazon. And, I'm creating an Amazon storefront to kind of show people the different things that I've used for training aids and to create things like this golf simulator, or even, mic stands and all the things that I use with affordability in mind, just as a way to show you guys a different way to do it, okay? So I'm just curious, though, if anybody wants to chime in the comments below, let me know what are you using? What's the best out there for you? For me, I really do like my Mevo Plus, but I also enjoy having access to TrackMan. I don't think there's anything better on the market, especially for outside. I really love it for outside purposes. But indoor, I think the Mevo with RCT golf balls is quite comparable, and you would be surprised. So let me know what you think on that side. The future of these golf sims too, I don't know. The trend at the merchandise show was that I was seeing, move this mic up a little bit here. There we go. I was seeing, there we go. I was seeing, force plates and 3D imaging and, putt view goggles. And it appeared that most of these companies are now starting to join forces. So I wonder, capitalist America, that's how we do things. But I wonder if TrackMan will end up buying up, some type of force plate thing, and then will Foresight go for the other force plate. But at some point, they're going to be packages, and then eventually it'll trickle down in price to where you could probably get one put in your home. But there's going to be some element of trickle down where you're going to have sim you hit into, a platform that moves in front of you, and, maybe real sand and real grass that you hit off of that you can change in and out. Who knows? But we're evolving. So just think outside of the box. The stuff is not as expensive as you once thought. And I look at video games as a waste of time. But for some of you guys that play video games, I'm sure you spent way more on that than I've ever spent on putting this golf simulator and golf studio in my house. But for the Golf Tech Corner, just wanted to talk briefly about that, the golf sims and what I'm seeing, and still calling TrackMan number 1 for that top tier. But for that lower tier, with the Garmin SkyTrack True Golf, I prefer my Mevo Plus over anything that I've seen. So that is that. And that is that for today's show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We're going to, like I said, tighten some things up, but just getting used to the idea of talking to you about golf and different topics that are important to me and I think are pertinent to my golf clients and those that are following me. But I really do appreciate you guys. Please remember to like, follow on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and also on TikTok. And keep chiming in for more and more types of content, looking to get a little more versatile, getting back into the teaching side and show you guys what we do there, and maybe even highlight some of my better players and the kids that I work with that I think are really talented, and some of the ones that I think have made really big improvements. So let's dive into it. Let's find our DNA, and let's have fun with golf in 2026.